The sergeant, his first name's Clarence, Master Sergeant, came in from New Mexico. He said, what I brought in this morning, he said that he brought two little men in. And he called them little green men, then he described them as a greenish blue. And they were 4 foot tall, and they were dead.
We're talking about non-humans.
Non-humans, right.
Was this Master Sergeant breaking security by talking about this?
No, because we were all secure. See, when you have security like that, you can't even take your husband to a party. If we had our Christmas party, we went and there was guard at the door. And nobody but people in the branch or the other ones, you can bring your husband and your wife. And when you're at home, you can't talk about your job because you got that in your head. You got security and you're clear and you keep your damn mouth shut. That's all there is to it.
Can you elaborate beyond what is on this audio excerpt?
Yes, because we also discussed this when we did not have the recording on. And she clarified that Master Sergeant Clarence, he started describing what happened, and initially everyone at the table was horrified, thinking that there had been a crash of a military aircraft, and everyone was sad and upset, thinking that perhaps somebody they knew had died in this crash. And then he clarified that no, the people who were killed were not human, and that this wasn't a crash of an airplane.
And that's where she heard him describe the little green men who were greenish blue?
Yes. There was something that happened later on that day that kind of adds weight to this entire conversation. That was the fact that June recalled that there was what she referred to as a too hot memo that came out later that day. And this meant that there was a courier from the commanding officer who went to every single person who worked there, and you were required to stop what you were doing, read the memorandum, and sign off on it stating that you understood it and that you would comply. And it was telling everyone that some irresponsible person has been discussing little green men and crash saucers, and that you will cease and desist immediately upon penalty of being discharged and possibly being prosecuted. And the two things that bothered June about this, one was if there was no truth to what this Master Sergeant had told everyone, then why would they even bother with this elaborate procedure? And secondly, she wanted to know how the commanding officer knew about this so quickly, because she said it wasn't that long after she had the conversation with this Master Sergeant.
It suggests that the copy room where they were talking was probably bugged, and it also implies that even within Wright Field and people with Q clearances, they would threaten anybody, since they all had clearances together, they would threaten anybody who even talked to each other about non-humans.
Exactly. So in other words, they did not view this as simple office gossip.
And the very fact that they would try to strong-arm their own insiders who had similar Q clearances, including the Master Sergeant and June and the others, and do it in such a way that they were saying there was no truth to this when they all knew that it was, shows that there was kind of this 1984 newspeak going on within Wright Field among the very people who had to have access to this information to do their work.
Absolutely. It reflects a consistent policy of denial, of suppressing discussion or inquiry, and that is also furthered by the other major revelation. She talked about the scientists and engineers who came back from New Mexico where they had experimented with the V-2 rocket and later with the Aerobee rocket. They saw UFOs routinely while they were doing their work.
This was a cover-up. It was right at the very start of it. Project Blue Book was not formed to investigate those things. It was formed to stop the people from thinking that's what it was. That's what Project Blue Book was all about. It was to try to squelch all talk of UFOs.
You mentioned that people in this group went to White Sands to do testing and then came back.
Yes.
And did they say that anything unusual had happened to them?
Well, they said they were just as thick as fleas up there. They'd sit at night, they'd sit on the outside of their motels where they would stand in the buildings, and they would just watch them go over all types and shapes. There'd be motherships, big ones with little ones coming out of it, and then they'd see them return, and it had different colored lights. Some had orange, sometimes red and yellow, different lights they would see. And then if the people, the engineers and scientists would report it, that they saw them, they locked them up in a motel for 24 hours with no access to no radios, no people, no nothing, and they had them to write up what they saw, and then when they come out the following day, 24 hours later, they'd have them write it up again. And like the engineer said, to hell with it, I'm not going to report anymore. I'm not going to be locked up for 24 hours.
This accomplished two purposes. One of them was, obviously, they got at least two different accountings of whatever it was that was observed, and then they basically discouraged these scientists and engineers from discussing it further or reporting anything else in the future.